Together the meeting for April 12th, 2011 of the regularly scheduled Westchester Township Trustees meeting. Mrs. Williams, if you'll please call the roll. Here.
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 And if we'll all rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have a few people signed up for our citizens' comments. We will have another citizens' comments available to us later in the evening, but for now we will take the ones who have signed up. The first one is Mark Evans. If you would like to come down and address the board.
Okay, good evening, board. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today. I am the Vice President of the Ivory Hills.
Could you give us your name and address for the record, please?
Oh, sure. Mark Evans. It's 7957 Plantation Drive. That's Westchester, 69. Anyhow, I am the Vice President of the Homeowners Association for Ivory Hills, which is a subdivision up off of Towersville Road. And I want to let you know that we've recently got our Homeowners Association organized again. And one of the things that we really are struggling with in our neighborhood is traffic. We've got a serious problem with speeding on Plantation and Cascade. We've been working with the police department, and I know Eric's here tonight, and Eric and his people have done a great job. Every time they've called, they've come out, they've run radar. But the fact is they can't be here 24/7. And we continuously not have people speeding, but excessively speeding. I was able to get through the police department traffic studies for our neighborhood. Since 2005, there have been 7 traffic studies performed. And there have been, and I'm going to go through these, if you look at all 7 of these traffic studies, there were 60 cars that went between 50 and 54 miles per hour, 38 that went between 55 and 59, 28 that went from 60 to 64 miles per hour, 23 that went 65 to 69 miles per hour, and 3 that went over 70. And this is a 25 mile per hour zone. The other problem we have with our neighborhoods, we don't have sidewalks. And we've got a lot of kids, there's a few of them here tonight, that when they want to go out and walk on to the neighbor's house, they've got to go on the street. And they're basically walking at highway speed. And so the reason we're here tonight is that we want to let you know of this problem. And we're searching for solutions. I've thrown out a number of options to the township. Every single one of them has been shot down so far. One was speed bumps. I've been told there's a lot of studies that say they don't work. I don't know that. The other is stop signs, which again they say is just for traffic control. And then the last one that we've talked about is a bike lane. I'm not offering, I guess, proposing to have one put in because obviously there'd be a lot of expense with a sidewalk. Although I think we'd like to have that, but we're realistic about the cost. And one thing we would like to have is maybe one side of the street dedicated as a bike lane with no parking, have it marked on the street to physically narrow down the street and hopefully slow that speed down in the neighborhood, but also give the families a place to walk. I was told that Butler County doesn't really approve that for this type of a neighborhood, so we're kind of at a standstill at this point. We have really no options. I want to make sure that you were aware of the problem because it is a big concern of ours and it's continuously happening. So I think I'm probably at the end of my 2 minutes, but thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Evans. We have signed up also a Stephanie. Thank you. If you'd like to come up and give your name and address then for the record.
Hello, my name is Stephanie Howdeshell, and I live on 7972 Plantation Drive. And I am here for the same reasons. My husband and I have lived there on Plantation Drive now for 11 years. And 8 years ago, got pregnant and had my first child, who's 7 now, and 7.5, and that's when I've noticed there's been speeding issues. I mean, because prior to that, I was never walking around or anything, but I've been a stay-at-home mom, which I still am, and we have severe speeding issues. Like Mark said, he's done the data. I mean, a couple cars going over 75 miles per hour. I wanted to bring up, and I would love to bring the clip sometime to show, but I know 12 News, Scarlet Oaks did a study on television. It was on the news February 21st, showing cars going 35 miles an hour not able to stop hitting the children, the poster of the child. All I could think of is that could be one of my kids. We play in the front yard all the time. I'm very active. We walk to Meyer. Very dangerous. People would be driving 50 miles an hour while I'm pushing the stroller, trying to be active. I don't like to drive everywhere, especially with gas at $4 a gallon. I don't really believe in driving everywhere. I just think of my kids. I think of my little girl. The ball went out in the road the other day. The car just ran right over it. He didn't even bother stopping. It's just continuous, and it has been. And the police are wonderful. They come every time I call. I have them on speed dial. But the car's already gone. The car's already gone. And I've followed people home. I've talked to them personally. They're still the chronic speeders. I follow people to the mosque. Women in minivans are picking up their children. They still speed to go get their children. We don't know what to do. We're at a loss as a community. Actually, we've had 2 roadkills in the last month alone. And I don't know,
When you say roadkills,
well, I mean, there are animals,
pets
but
or something?
yeah, well, I don't know. No, the one was not a pet, I know, and I don't know what the other one was, because somebody did call and they had it picked up. But regardless, I don't want it to be my dog either, or somebody else's dog, because we do play ball in the front yard with our dog. She doesn't go in the road, but it's been a severe issue, and we don't know what to do because, like Mark said, he has brought up every option and everything's been shut down. You
haven't not considered sidewalks?
We would love, we definitely as a board would consider sidewalks in our neighborhood and try to get the petitions for it. I can't remember what came of it. Mark knows a little more.
We have approached that. There was a cost issue. We had to get approval from our neighbors. I haven't really found out what the process is.
Okay, maybe you can discuss that with staff later. Thank you.
But thank you so much. And that's it. I mean, that's just the biggest issue is in our neighborhood alone. Like I said, a lot of people walk with their dogs. I'm on our board of our homeowners association. It's been something that a lot of the neighbors have been concerned about, and they just kind of look to us and like, well, we call the police, but like I said, the police are wonderful. I love Westchester Police, but they just can't be there all the time. And they can't get the same people I see. For some reason, they're not being ticketed. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have a Kurt Hudeshow. Give your name and address, please.
I certainly will. It's Kurt Houdeshell, Houdeshell. Got it now? Yeah. On 7972 Plantation Drive. I'm here in support with Mark and Stephanie, as you've heard already prior, around the speeding issue. I don't have a whole lot of new information that you probably haven't heard in the last minute, but one thing I did want to mention, though, that hasn't previously been brought up is to understand what we are up against is we have obviously a lot of traffic, and we do our best to inform the police, and they are effective, like I said, at controlling it. But you couple that, there's a fundamental design flaw with the road that we're on. It's far too wide for a residential street, and you can have 2 cars parked and still do side-by-side, there's enough for 2 cars to go by each other's. And it's really hard. You almost have to be cognizant to avoid speeding going down our street. And I think that's really what we're up against. Not only we have this traffic, but you couple that with this wide, gaping causeway that you can go, and traffic just takes advantage of it. And I mean, either people aren't aware of it or they enjoy driving fast down there is what we have. So, like Stephanie mentioned, we try and be active. Not as active as I'd like, but for instance, I was riding bike to the lease the other day, and she's young, and she's still trying to learn left from right, And I'm like, turn right, and she cut left on her bike, and all it takes is something like that, But I know a car going 25 miles an hour would have a much better opportunity of reacting and controlling their reaction to a kid darting than a car going 45 or 40, which is probably more of the common norm there. So those are the kind of situations we're dealing with. So like I said, I just want to know is like what can we kind of think about doing before something unthinkable, but really it could have been avoidable tragedy could happen on our street. There are a lot of kids there and animals. It's a family street, but it's kind of turned into a highway, a residential highway. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Mr. Barry Gallinger. Am I pronouncing that right this time?
Did it right.
Thank you very much. Would you like to give your name and address?
I'm more than happy to. I'm getting pretty used to this now. It's Barry Gallinger, 7744 Joan Drive, Westchester. And before I get in real quick about my subject, Joan Drive where I live, we have the same thing. I live in the S-turn, and we get all the cars in there trying to be Mario Andretti. And we've had our neighbors and my trees taken out several times just since I've lived here. But what I found from Hamilton County is they'll put a sheriff's car parked on the street somewhere. Sometimes they man it, sometimes they don't, and that will stop exactly what their problem is. And because they never know when the police is in there, and they might want to try that temporarily and just see if that'll curtail it, because even on my street, Westchester will sit in that little cul-de-sac by my house, and these people come around that turn, and as soon as they see it, you see the brake lights come on. So it does work. You might want to try that, just as a suggestion. I'm here to talk about the rids and tips real quick again. I've had several meetings since I was here, I think March 22nd it was, and I talked to Judith Boyko over there and Patricia Williams, who's almost my grandmother. She was telling me, but she's my age, so I look, she looks good for her age. But anyway, she looks young, don't you? Anyway, but what I'm here for is that I found that the rids and tips agreements, especially for the tips with Westchester, I read all the agreements because they're kind enough to give me the book on them. And what I found with the agreements is a grievous error. And that is, it doesn't say that the schools are held harmless 100%. It says schools are held harmless up to 100%. And what I found from talking to Mr. Keim and Judith over there, that they don't get 100%. And when I went to the school board last night and I spoke at length with them, they also, Jenny Logan, the treasurer, doesn't feel that they're getting 100% either, not only just from Westchester, but also Liberty Township, who I met with. So what I'm requesting, actually what I'm demanding as a taxpayer citizen, is that the agreements be reviewed and amended to say 100%. Get rid of the up-tos, because that allows the county or the state auditor, whoever's involved in all this, it allows them to determine what they're allowed to give. So if you talk to Liberty Township, what they get from the county, they don't know if it's 100% or not. And I believe that's the same thing happening here as well. So I need to have those amended to read that. Now the UCB, the Union Center Boulevard, which is the big dinosaur to this whole thing that started in 1990, that's taken millions of dollars away from school funds and MRDD funds and senior citizens funds and police and fire. That's the big monster that needs to get worked. Because in 1990, when I understand from talking to Judith and the folks, when this took place, the law did not allow any refunds or agreements to where the schools could be given back money. Now, right now, you have $20.5 million sitting in a bank that you can't give to anybody except use it for Union Center Boulevard issues. I understand you're wanting to put a third lane in on Union Center Boulevard. That, to me, is not a good practice because you can't use those funds to give it to anybody else. And my time's probably up, so I'll have to go back.
2 minutes, but we do have another spot.
Yes, I'll see you then. Okay.
And it's all important issues, and I know the trustees would like to address it during the trustee comment period. Thank you. Moving on, we have a presentation tonight. Mrs. Boyko.
Yes, I'd like to acknowledge and commemorate the week of April 10th through the 16th as the National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. And interpretation, these are the men and women who dispatch emergency 911 communication calls, obviously taking the emergency calls and then dispatching our police and fire to the areas of need. I believe Mrs. Deb Zeller is here to accept the proclamation on behalf of the Board of Trustees. And Shannon, excuse me. Mrs. Zeller is one of the communication supervisors, and Mrs. Gleason is one of our communication officers, and they're here this evening to accept this. And I don't want to take a lot of time. I'd rather have them share with you their experiences, and I know the board would also like to share your appreciation to them. But again, April 10th through the 16th is National Telecommunicators Week, and this proclamation is obviously going to these ladies and gentlemen of the Communication Center. And I think most importantly what I wanted to share and quickly share is that these generally are the unsung, potentially, heroes of our 911 public safety force because they are receiving that first line call and relaying pertinent and critical and emergency information to the first responders of police and fire. So they are, although perhaps the first line and the unsung and unseen, their role is ever so critical in everything that we do from a public safety perspective. So I'd like to thank you very much and all of your coworkers and peers and present this to you for your week.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I just want to say thank you on behalf of Ms. Boyko and the trustee board. We appreciate this greatly. It's the thank you that is all that we need, really. A thank you saying that we matter and that we're doing our job the way we're supposed to be doing it. So thank you very much.
You do matter.
I think it's so important that you know that the Board of, not just the Board of Trustees and the rest of our staff, but the entire community, I believe they really do. They may not think about it all the time, but they do understand how essential and critical your role is. And thank you so much for doing such an excellent job. You save lives out there every day, and I know everybody in this community appreciates all that you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
We now have some action items. We have, I'll entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes for February 8th.
So moved.
I'll second. Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker,
Yes?
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
I'll abstain. I was not at that meeting.
Right.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes for February 22nd.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve trustee meeting minutes from March 8th.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll please call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Okay, and I don't think we have documentation yet on the VOA
Yeah, we do.
work session minutes.
We do.
It says on our agenda we don't, but I got them.
Yeah.
We do.
We've all read them? Okay. I'll entertain a motion then to approve the National VOA Museum of Broadcasting work session minutes of March 22.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I also read the meeting minutes from March 22nd. Has everybody else read those, or you want to wait?
That was the Voice of America.
Oh, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Now, I'll entertain a motion then to approve payment of bills.
Also move.
Second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker,
Yes.
Mr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Lang.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Boyko, requisitions greater than $2,500.
Yes, item 1 is to Frost Brown Todd LLC, legal services through February of this year in the amount of $47,943.63. Items 2 through 5 are various purchases to numerous vendors for bulk EMS supplies. The fire department has a process that they receive multiple quotes from various vendors on all sorts of bulk EMS supplies, and through diligent receipt and evaluation of those multiple quotes, they do request from the board to purchase these in bulk. Some items are purchased, those with the lowest price, items are purchased from those vendors with the lowest price for specific items. So item 2 is fire, $12,201.18 to Boundtree Medical LLC. Item 3, $8,767.57 to Moore Medical Group. Nightingale Medical for the purchase of the bulk EMS supplies in the amount of $6,430. And item 5, fire $3,412.75 to Henry Scheim Matrix Medical. Item 6 is fire to purchase equipment for their physical fitness program. This is for Power Systems Incorporated, $7,283.66. The fire department has enacted a physical fitness program for its firefighter paramedics, and Chief Guller has statistics that demonstrate that this program does enhance the condition of our firefighters and their ability to perform their duties. Item 7, fire $4,500 to S.A. Communale Company Incorporated. This is to perform the annual and required fire alarm and sprinkler testing for each one of the 5 fire stations. Item 8, police, in the amount of $48,800 to IES Interactive Training. This is to purchase the Judgmental Training Simulator System. This is a system that Chief Niehaus is requesting the board's consideration through payment of asset forfeiture funds, so police levy funds will not be utilized. And the Judgmental Training Simulator, the chief believes that this will allow over 350 scenarios where officers can train from different interactive processes with different scenarios of combative type of training. And it is speculated and it is believed that we will see reduction in costs and potentially overtime because the simulator will be in-house. It will be accessible very quickly by any of the officers. If they have downtime during their patrols, they could come in and do some of the training. He could schedule it that way. And then also, because it's a simulator type of activity, there will potentially be reduced cost to ammunition because obviously when they train with firearms, they have to actually load and unload with the ammunition. So he believes there is going to be some cost savings, and this is something that we would be measuring through some of our performance measurements and determining and being able to report back to the board the actual savings. Item 9, police, $15,330 to Vance's Law Enforcement. This is to purchase 14 patrol rifles for law enforcement deployment. Item 10, $11,000 to Michael W. Odell. This is to attend SWAT training. Item 11, $4,780.93 to Vance Law Enforcement. These are to purchase different law enforcement pistols, 7 of them for deployment. Item 12, services, $130,382.42 to Jackson Construction, and this is for the 2011 curb contract for various township roads that need curb repairs. And item 13, services, $39,410 to Kaffenberger Truck Equipment Company. This is to purchase a medium truck bed and snow removal system to equip the most recent truck purchase.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to approve items 1 through 13.
Also move.
Second?
Discussion?
Yeah, I would like to see if the chief could talk to us a little bit about item 8, the IES interactive training that Ms. Boyko described. My question, Eric, is that the simulator similar to one offered at Butler Tech? And if the answer is yes, is there a cost savings by having our own versus using the one at Butler Tech?
Over time, it is very similar to the one at Butler Tech. Over time, there would be a cost savings. Most importantly, right away, would be the convenience savings of actually having that in-house at the police department and being able to use it, again, as Mrs. Boyko pointed out, during patrols, bringing in officers for training on duty. The problem with Butler Tech is scheduling issues and getting people there on Butler Tech's schedule as opposed to training them on our schedule.
A lot of other communities use the Butler Tech facility?
I'm not sure how many. I know these training simulators have been used. Various departments own these, City of Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, and I know some of the even some of the smaller agencies have their own simulators. I'm not sure which agencies use Butler Tech or the various.
Or with the asset forfeiture fund, correct?
Yes, sir.
What can those dollars be used for?
The monies that we get from the Department of Justice, the federal funds, are earmarked for training, which is also on here, equipment. Some of them are specifically earmarked to combat drug-type crimes, and those are, basically it's training and equipment.
Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.
Eric, this is a no cost to taxpayer.
It's, yeah,
These are the forfeiture fund. Okay?
yeah, 100% out of the asset forfeiture.
And also, our police, I notice we have some good SWAT training with LAPD.
Yes, sir. Mr. Odell is on the schedule on our training calendar every other year. And again, that's also paid for out of the asset forfeiture funds. And this is the off year to bring him back.
So with the training conducted here, would that save us on overtime
It saves us in cost.
costs?
Yes, absolutely. The price per student would be much higher to send somebody away. And it also saves us by bringing in the instructor here. And that cost is actually for 2 instructors.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
Just there probably is a correction to the item 10, that this should be conduct the SWAT training as opposed to attend the SWAT training. And I think in addition to item 8, wanted to just make sure the board is aware that, with the recent incident from the bank robbery to the chase on Interstate 75 and our police officers' response to that, and collectively and comprehensively with the other police departments in the greater Cincinnati area, I think it just reiterates how important training is for these officers from a perspective, because you never know at any given morning what you're going to face.
This is probably an unfair question to ask without asking you ahead of time to get the research, but it seems to me I remember that our cost for ammunition, 98% of which is expended in practice, is really large. I'm thinking somewhere north of $100,000 a year. If this can save us not only significant, in other words, they're getting significant training without actually firing live ammunition, plus we have to buy an awful lot of firearms because they just flat wear out after being fired so many times. Perhaps our firearms last longer. It seems to me that this, having more interactive training, could pay for itself. In addition to the fact that we don't have to have police officers actually scheduling time, perhaps they can just take 20 minutes to work on this in-house rather than having to schedule some set amount of time at Butler Texas convenience, etc. I just see this as being a very cost-effective a system to have in-house.
Well, we do. We look forward to bringing you some of that data after this, should the Board of
And
Trustees
I think this
approve.
is what you're going to be looking for, right?
Should the Board of Trustees approve item 8, we look forward to bringing you some of those performance measurements of that data. The departments have been working on whether it's an existing service that we provide or a program that we are electing to implement. We are developing performance measurements for a lot of these programs and services so that we could come back and demonstrate that it is a benefit to the taxpayers to provide this service, or this program is going to be paying for itself. Things that we assume would happen, we're actually demonstrating that with true measurements. And so this is something that we will bring back data for you.
Thank you.
Judy, I'm a little confused on the math on item 10, the 11,000, and I'm all for the SWAT training. But it says it's $600 per student, and I see one example where we're going to have 20 students and one where it's only 19. 19 times 600 is 11,400. 20 times 600 is 12,000. How do we get the 11,000 cost?
Maybe he's already received a sort of a down payment before the implementation of the program.
So you're complaining that we're paying them less than what?
It just does the math
You're
on that.
complaining because Mr. Odell is being shortchanged?
And I apologize, for the original quote was what you said per student, and then we were able to get a small reduction in cost.
Okay, so is it for 20
It reflects the
or
overall.
19?
It'll be up to 20.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Can I say one thing, just real quick, about the judgmental training simulator? The thing I forgot to mention before, I failed to mention, when it comes to liability and use of force situations, we teach everybody how to shoot every day. The biggest thing we need to teach people is when to shoot, and that's where the biggest liability for our officers lies, is when to shoot, and that's what this simulator will address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any more discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, personnel items, item 14.
The Board of Trustees previously approved a complement of seasonal employees, and at this time, the Services Department is bringing to you that full complement for hire. The following gentlemen and ladies will be, with the board approval, be employed as seasonals for the 2011 season. David Rhodes, Jason Nocero in the cemeteries, Stephen Staley in parks, and Donald Kane in parks. These were effective March 22nd, 2011. Dylan Burton and David Johnson for roads, effective March 24th, 2011. Corey Smith, roads, William Shibler, roads, Stephen Holly, UCB Landscape District, and Daniel Moore, parks. These hires are effective March 28th, 2011. Brian Newman, parks, effective April 4th, 2011, and James Cleary, parks, effective April 11th, 2011, all at the hourly rate of $11.25 per hour.
Thank you. Do we have a motion then to hire our 12 seasonal employees per Mrs. Boyko's list?
Also moved.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 15.
In the past, the Westchester Township Board of Trustees have honored and supported the volunteers who serve in township committees, boards, and other programs and committees. And at this time, staff would like to offer the suggested date and time of Tuesday, May 10th, 2011. It would be before your first meeting in May at the time from 4:45 to 5:45. It is a little different time period, and we would like to propose a little different presentation. Generally, the volunteers come and they interact with the board and their department directors in the lobby with light refreshments. This year, because of the challenging roles that public officials and government volunteers play, and at sometimes random acts of violence are unfortunately forced upon them, we would like to host this year's volunteer reception and actually do a demonstration of ALICE, which is Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate Training, which is to address what those boards can do in the event that they be an act of violence that occurs during some kind of Board of Trustee meeting or Zoning Commission or Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. And so we would like to, the police department actually gives us training, and we would like to host the reception to incorporate part of that ALICE training. So if you'd like to set the date and the time and a general consensus that you approve of the contents, that would be great.
I'll entertain a motion then to set a date for a Westchester Volunteer Appreciation Reception as Tuesday, May 10th from 4:45 to 5:45.
I so move.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Do we have any guesstimate as to how long the training will take?
About 45 minutes.
45 minutes? Okay. Usually there's a lot of mingling. It's, we have an hour and 45 minutes will be training. I'm okay with that. It's just
I'm
significantly
okay
different.
with the fact that normally we have less than 10% of our volunteers show up. I mean, they show up to work at their different volunteer occupations, but they don't come in to be stroked and get punch and cake. I foresee we have a lot better turnout. I think they'll find this very, very interesting.
And this has been discussed with some of the volunteers, and I think they do see some value in it. And we hope this is training, of course, that we never, ever, ever, ever have to use.
Sure.
But in the event something does obscenely occur, they feel very, very confident that this will be something that they could include in their arsenal of information.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this. More discussion? Nope. Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 16.
Yes, item 16 is just memorializing what has been occurring over the last 15 years. As the board may be aware, the Pisgah Youth Organization has scheduled and maintained the Keener Park ball fields informally for, like I said, the past 15 years. With little or no assistance from the township. We do general mowing, but they maintain all of the fields. They bring and they purchase new benches, or they purchase new bases for those things to continue the operations. And these are all basically utilizing these fields are recreational and adult groups to use that field. It charges a minimal fee for those recreational leagues and sports organizations that want to participate, and all money collected goes back into the fields at Keener to maintain them and utilize them. It has been a tremendous benefit for the township to have this relationship with PYO. because if it wasn't for them, township staff and the maintenance crews would have to be maintaining and doing a lot of the work that they have taken upon themselves. So what they've asked is, and obviously through the township, we'd like to memorialize this agreement, although it's been occurring informally for the last 15 years. And this has been brought to your attention and requesting the board's consideration to approve this agreement. And a sample motion has been drafted for your consideration at the bottom of the memorandum.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to approve an agreement between the Westchester Township Board of Trustees and the Pisgah Youth Organization, or PYO, to schedule, maintain, and use the Keener Park baseball fields, and authorize the township administrator to make non-substantive changes if necessary with law director approval and execute said agreement.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion?
I think this has been a very good organization, a good use of our township asset. For the last 15 years, practically saved the township thousands of dollars. No staff hours were spent on it. I think this will be a good agreement.
Thank you. Mr. Lang? I certainly have to agree with Mr. Lee. This has been a savings to the township as well as an excellent amenity for both the adults and youth of the township. So, Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 17.
State statute permits the declaring of items surplus at different values, $2,500 or over, or $2,500 or less than $2,500, and demonstrates the process on how you could declare those properties surplus. At this time, Fire Chief Guller is requesting the board's consideration to approve a statutory resolution, number 08-2011, that declares surplus item for sale a 1996 Pierce 75 Quint engine. It has been determined that the value of this item is over the $2,500, so we must process it through the ORC statute that demonstrates it, namely sealed bid, taking sealed bids, advertising and taking sealed bids. So at this time, requesting the trustees' consideration to approve statutory resolution number 08-2011, declaring the surplus item for sale, and again is the 1996 Pierce 75 Quint. The resolution is part of your packets, and basically, now therefore it be resolved, the Township Board of Trustees is hereby agreed to determine that the said item is in the opinion of the Board of Trustees has a value in excess of $2,500. Chief Guller did provide some documentation from manufacturers of this piece of equipment declaring that it is of greater than $2,500 value. This would also authorize the Township Administrator to advertise for sealed bids and authorize the Administrator to execute documents and take such other actions as may be necessary to carry out the resolution and award the bid.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion then to approve statutory resolution number 08-2011, declaring the surplus item for sale.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Boyko, item 18.
Traditionally, the police department applies for a annual bulletproof vest program grant, and traditionally is awarded. The grant pays up to 50% of the cost for the bulletproof vest, and Chief Niehaus is requesting the board's consideration to apply for the said grant. It's the 2011 U.S. Department of Justice Bulletproof Vest Grant, and if awarded, authorize the Township Administrator to accept the grant.
Thank you. I'll entertain a motion then to apply for the 2011 Bulletproof Vest Program Grant.
Also move.
I'll second.
Discussion?
Excellent program. Every time there's a grant, 50-50 split, saves us money and saves police lives. It's a good thing.
That's right. If they have the money to provide the grant this year, it'll be great. Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 19.
Motion not to object to a new liquor permit for Crumb Enterprises. They are doing business as Flavors Eatery at 8374 Princeton Glendale Road.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion not to object to a new liquor permit for Crumb Enterprises.
I'll make the motion that we not object.
I so move. No, I'm
He
second.
made the motion, you're seconding?
I'm second.
Okay, discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll?
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes?
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lyon?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 20?
The board may recall that through the efforts of Senator Cates and previous legislatures, that the township was awarded approximately $1.5 million in a state grant from the capital budget that was administered by the Ohio Cultural Facilities Commission. We have 99% finished phase 1 of that, or phase 2 of that project, which was the restoring the exterior tile and making other improvements to the facade of the building. There remains, and we've received about 75% of the reimbursement back from that first $1 million phase. And at this point, requesting the board's consideration to pursue phase 2, which will repair the remainder of the block at the north elevation, and then also repair and replace the existing roof. So that's another $500,000 grant that when all is completed, that building would be structurally and in its integrity, it would be sound and stable, and that there will be minimal improvements necessary or upkeep to the exterior of the building once we finish these two grant processes. So we are requesting the board's consideration to approve a resolution that's required by the OCFC. This is not statutory required, but it is required by the governing state agency to approve resolution number 07-2011, submitting the previously approved cooperative use grant and cultural facilities construction administration and funding agreement. I have the documentation in its draft form here. We are required to submit it by the end of this month, April, and a sample motion has been has been submitted for your consideration at the bottom of your memorandum.
Thank you, Mrs. Boyko. Could you read the sample motion? It's kind of long.
I certainly will. Motion to approve resolution number 07-2011, submitting the previously approved cooperative use agreement and the cultural facilities construction administration and funding agreement, and approving any other necessary agreements between the Westchester Township Board of Trustees and the State of Ohio, acting by and through the Ohio Cultural Facilities Commission for eligible reimbursement and governance associated with rehabilitation of the Voice of America National Museum of Broadcasting in substantially the same form as attached, and authorizing the Township Administrator to execute said agreements and make non-substantive changes if necessary, and authorizing any other actions as may be appropriate to implement and execute the actions of this resolution. I think the non-substantive changes should also include with law director approval.
Do you want to include that as part of the motion? Okay. Do we have a motion then from the board?
Sure, I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that we approve the resolution as read and modified by Ms. Boyko.
And a second, Mr. Lance?
I'll second.
Mr. Wong? Okay. Discussion.
Now, in short, this is just to get reimbursement for the money that we spent first. Is that correct?
Yes, this action by the board will allow the township to submit the application in order to apply for the $500,000 grant. And once the grant is awarded to us, then we need to demonstrate all of the appropriate action and paperwork back to the OFC to get reimbursement. Sure. But once the application is approved, it is generally guaranteed that the reimbursement will occur, as long as all the paperwork is done properly, and we will ensure that it is.
You know, we certainly owe a great deal of thanks to Senator Cates for all the hard work he's done on this project and helping us secure these funds for the VOA Museum.
He did, and what's I think particularly important about this stage is that at the end of the next $500,000 worth of repair work done on that building, I think we'll have a building where they can start holding fundraising efforts. Right now, you can't very well hold a fundraising event if everybody has to wear a hard hat and is in danger of coming to physical harm if they set foot on the place. At the completion of this, we can start having functions again at the building. There might be many people out there who remember the regular pancake breakfasts, the wine fest. I could see a beer fest. It's a wonderful place to hold events, but it has to be structurally sound in order to do that. And this motion will help provide us with the funds we need to complete that structural repair work that was so necessary.
So far, on the front side of it, it looks beautiful. And they have done a tremendous job.
It not only looks good from the road, but it now has a handicapped accessible entrance in front, plus some period light fixtures that look very handsome there. It appears much more like it did back in the 1940s when it was originally done. Any more discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stover?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Mrs. Boyko, item 21.
One submitted for approval, the application for approval, and approved, then obviously we need to make the respective improvements to the Phase 3 of the VOA building. And this time it's requesting the board's consideration to authorize the township administrator to negotiate and execute a contract with Fearing and Hagenauer Architects for that design, architectural design, engineering, and construction administration services. A sample motion has been drafted for your consideration.
Okay, do we have a motion then to authorize the township administrator to execute a contract with Fearing and Hagenauer for Phase 3?
Sure, I'll make the motion that we authorize the township administrator to negotiate a contract with Fearing and Hagenauer Architects for professional architectural engineering and construction administration services for Phase 3 of the Voice of America Museum of Broadcasting, and authorize the township administrator to execute a contract for said not to exceed $37,500 with law director approval.
Second?
Thank you. Discussion?
You know, this is a firm and an individual who not only is very well qualified to do this type of work with his background, but Mr. Fearing also has a deep passion and a love for that building and the tradition of that building. Anybody that's ever had the opportunity to do a tour of that building with him will know exactly what I'm speaking of. So I think he's the right person for the job.
I understand. I agree with you. But does this have to be put out for bid?
No, when we negotiated the original contract with Mr. Fearing, we contemplated there were going to be multiple phases and multiple programs as part of this application, and so when we did an RFQ for services, it encompassed every phase of it.
So we did go out for bid, but it was
Yes.
some time ago. Any more discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you call the roll.
Mrs. Stover?
Yes.
Mr. Long?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Now, we don't have any first readings of resolutions at this time, so we have arrived at our second citizens' comments for the evening. If any resident or property owner or business owner would like to come forward to address the board. Yes, sir, if you would like to come forward and give us your name and address.
My name is Gene Reichard. I live at 7527 Secret Creek Court here in Westchester, up in Lakota Springs. I'm here this evening to discuss the parking resolution, which is, I think, due for a second reading this evening, or maybe a third. I'm not sure where it stands. But I'm here with several of my other RV owners. We are all members of the River City Winnies, which is a chapter of the Winnebago Club here in Cincinnati. I've owned my RV since 2004. Due to my lot size and driveway, I can't not park on the driveway. It's just doesn't work. So I've got a pretty good size investment in this piece of equipment, and I store it inside during the winter and all the time that I'm not using it. But when I go on trips and that, I am using it parked in front of my house for about up to 48 hours to load and up to 48 hours to unload. At times in the spring and in the fall, when you're either de-winterizing or winterizing, it takes an extra day sometimes because of just the work you have to do. And I don't have anywhere else to really do it. When I purchased this in 2004, I don't think there was any restrictions on parking on the street. So as I see it now, we're talking about enacting a resolution that retroactively, is going to affect me. And, a 24-hour time frame, if I get cited for anything in excess of that, the resolution right now cites $100 a day. I don't think there's any cap on that, the way the resolution's written. So the cul-de-sac I live on has 9 homes. It's a pretty wide street. I know the reason the resolution was brought up was for safety issues, and I can well appreciate that. I don't want to endanger anybody in my community and or in the whole community of Westchester with the problem. But there is room in our streets to get through. Liberty Township recently passed their resolution on public right-of-way parking, and they based theirs on safety and aesthetic issues. Liberty took about 1 year to research the issues. They looked at surrounding ordinances and sought citizen input, and they came up with a 72-hour window. So, and that is 72 hours, I think, within any 7-day period. So, as I said, the loading and the unloading, I try and keep it a minimum. I try to take into consideration my neighbors and that, so I'm not causing any undue hardships on people. So I try and get in, get out. And I think anybody that has an RV, we try to be responsible in the way we conduct ourselves as far as the use of the RV. I guess I'm here to request that either Westchester adopt or consider adopting wording like Liberty Township did. To my knowledge, and I've asked the chief of police here, Eric Mayhouse, is there a state law, is there a county law? And supposedly there is none as such. And I asked the same question of Christine Mateic, and she said they came up with their 72 hours just as a result of their research and their discussions with the people in their community. So, it's been passed, and I think it is enacted now in Liberty Township. Again, I wish to thank Chief Mayhouse for his help and cooperation in answering my questions and giving me some guidance on this. I also, if the ordinance is passed, or the resolution, excuse me, how will the Westchester communicate this to its citizens? I don't see any wording in the resolution that talks about publishing in a newspaper or posting bills or anything in terms of notification of the resolution and an effective date period. Liberty's resolution has that type of wording in it as far as posting for, I think, 30 days, notice in several different places, and then also putting it in the local newspaper to run, I think, 3 consecutive weeks. And this is all to occur 30 days before implementation. The other thing, and I know this would be hard to administer, but in talking with some of the RV associations, Family Motor Coach, which is headquartered here in Cincinnati, Good Sam RV Club, they're both nationwide organizations. They have parking right council advisory committees in them. A lot of their focus is on preserving the right of a RV owner to park their RV on their own lot. But they don't have a whole lot of guidance on this parking on right-of-ways, with only the suggestion that, I think out in California this came up one time, whereby they suggested that maybe the existing RV owners be grandfathered. Like I said, I know this could be an administrative nightmare, but again, I think there may have been some different decisions made by people in going down this road if they knew they had an ordinance in place that they had to deal with versus now, here we are in 2011, 7 years after I purchased mine, and some of these people have had their RVs longer than I have. So I'm just asking for some consideration here and to be fair in the process. I don't want to impair public safety. I've had to use the services of our Life Squad once, and I appreciate that, so I don't want to have to be guilty of any of that. So I thank the board for their time, and hope we can reach some compromise on this issue.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like? Yes, sir. If you'd like to come up and give us your name and address, please.
My name's Dennis Bender. I'm at 8227 Bench Tree Drive. I'm the president of the Beckett Ridge Homeowners Association, and we're just here to support this resolution. And if anything, we would like to see the time limit reduced. We have probably 7, 8 areas in Beckett where we consider a very, very, safety issue. We've contacted Mr. Wong, contacted other people. So when we saw this, we really want to see it happen. So that's the end of the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who would like to address the board? Yes, sir. All right, give your name and address again.
Yeah. Barry Gallinger, 7744 Joan Drive, Westchester. I just wanted to finish up with a prior conversation I had about, like I said, last night I attended the Lakota School Board meeting, and then for 2.5 hours I observed how well the school is doing and how well the kids do in that school system. We've got a lot of state and national award winners. We have a lot of things going on. These teachers are doing a lot with a little, and I think we should be really proud of that. But I think that it's time to amend the 5 TIFs and get it back the way it should be. I realize from talking to Judy Boyko that it was, if we build it, they will come. Well, they're here. And now we have to deal with it. The schools are overwhelmed. The fire and police are overrun. We've got to buy all these new things for them because they have to keep increasing their police force because crime is up from when I moved here in 2004. When I first moved here, I didn't feel like I had to lock my door. Now I do. But anyway, to amend the TIFs is very necessary. The Union Center Boulevard TIF, the Central Business District TIF, the Tylersville TIF, the Cincinnati-Dayton TIF, and the State Route 47 TIF. Now, I know that encompasses almost, I don't even want to think how many thousands of acres and businesses that don't pay taxes to the schools 100%. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking to have those, and I'm requesting the board to look into this because I believe the law can be amended. From what I have found from talking to all the professionals out here, is to have it amended so that the schools are held 100% harmless for 30 years or till the end of these TIFs. Now, some of these TIFs go to 2031, I believe it is. So they still have 21 years, some of them, taking funds away. Also, I'd like to have the TIFs to also stipulate with these amendments and that 100% hold harmless is given to the MRDD handicapped. We're taking so much money away from the handicapped. Westchester alone this year is $750,000 projected that's not going to MRDD. Okay, that is terrible. That's not counting Liberty Township. They're not giving it to them either. Okay, so MRDD for the handicapped, they need their money. Also for the senior services, the senior citizens, $347,000 was projected that would go to them just from the Union Center Boulevard TIF alone that they don't get because it all goes away into building projects, okay, new roads, you name it. They need to have their money. They shouldn't have to come in here and ask for $100,000 for seniors in prime. They should have their funding. I don't know why they don't. So that's what I'm saying. Now, police and fire, they've got their own choice what they want to do. But I think since TIF money is being used from the police and fire, whatever that chief needs or the fire chiefs need, they should get it without even question. Because they're the ones put in position now, it's got to take care of what we built, and they came. Okay? So that's what I'm trying to say to you, is that I'm asking you, I'm requesting you as a taxpayer, for all the folks out here in Westchester Township, to look at these TIFs and see if they can be changed. If they can, let's change them. Now, the word I get is, well, then we might not as well have a TIF because all the money's going to be going back to where it has to go. Well, so be it. Because I believe, from what I'm finding out, that these RIDs and TIFs are subsequently put on us taxpayers, homeowners. Because I made the statement that if y'all didn't make any payments to the road, you owe $69 million to these road projects and such. If you quit making the payments, do they have a foreclosure? Are they going to take the highway away from us? Are they going to take the buildings away? I don't know. But from what I heard was they could do due process, and all of us homeowners out here could have actual foreclosures almost put on us, or levies that could actually take the property. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. That part is just what I'm hearing. That's the newest information I've gotten, Judy. I know your face, you're going, oh my gosh. But I don't know if that's true, but that's something we need to find out. If these are affecting homeowners or business owners, if we're levying funds because we're borrowing money against future monies that hasn't even been raised yet. Now, I was told that if the TIFs were changed as I'm requesting, that there's a good chance because of the borrowed debt that Judy Boyko or whoever writes the checks out, Mr. Kime, to the schools and to the MRDD folks and the senior citizens, that you wouldn't have the money to give to them because you've got it all borrowed. I think that is really sad, personally. And that's what's been my big issue. I've been asked by so many people, what is your passion and motivation for this, Barry? My passion and motivation is because I realize that monies that we voted for as taxpayers isn't going to where we thought it was going. Now, I've been told, there's lots of information out there about it. I challenge the board to show me where all that information was put. Maybe Lindsay can show me over there with the Pulse Journal where all this was put since 1990 today, where all the public knows about it. But that's my concern. That's my passion, is I want our schools to get what we voted for. I want the MRDD to get what we voted for. I believe the fire and police should get what we voted for. And I believe senior citizens should get what we voted for. This board or anybody else has no right to do what you all have done. And I'm not saying you all were a part of it, but you know it exists. I'm just asking you to fix it. If it means that we can't pay for the highway out there, Liberty Way, which we finance with school funds and such, Union Center Boulevard financed with school funds, the library, I would felt really good when I had your meeting the other day if you had told me all this stuff was paid for. But it's not. It's all borrowed. Did we need a TIF and RIDs taken away from homeowners to show we're solvent so we can get all this money? How come we haven't paid this stuff off if it's been since 1990? I can't figure out where all the money's going. I just saw, I added up, the 2 meetings I've attended here now is almost $600,000 was just given away without a blink of an eye for different projects. Westchester must have a big bucket of money somewhere, because I know the schools don't have it. And I think it's time to stop all this spending and start sitting down and really questioning some of this stuff and actually saying, look, these are real dollars. I know if I was sitting on the board, I will tell you something, I'd be looking into these TIFs right now, and I'd be trying to change them. I'd also be looking into all the expenses that we're doing. They put in the newspaper about me, quoting about last time, the $18,000 in mulch. Okay? That's a lot of money for some mulch. That feeds a lot of poor people in my book. But we give it away in mulch. We gave away almost $250,000 last session when I sat in here. Tonight it was $340,000. So that's what I have to say, is I'm requesting that you look into and enact changes to the TIFs and make it work. Either that, or you need to have a huge township meeting, and you need to come clean with all the township folks of what, because I really believe I voted yes for every levy I've ever had. And I'm retired Air Force, and I didn't know what a levy was when I first retired in 1992. I told you that. I thought they were talking about the Beachmont levy, where I grew up. However, if monies are levied and we approve it, and they are taxes from my pocket, I expect it to go where I choose for it to be approved, and it wins. And I got to believe that everybody out here sitting has to feel the same way. That's what the American way of life is. That's why we have votes. No one had the right to take these monies and take them for the benefit of building buildings and highways. Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for bringing up. Those are, TIFs and RIDs are always an important topic. They're important to this township, and I appreciate the opportunity to bring this up for public discussion again. We will do so during the trustee comment period. Right now, does anybody else want to get up and address the board on any issue? Yes, ma'am. If you'd like to come down and give us your name and phone number.
I'm Patricia Broom, and I have lived in Westchester 33 years.
Could you speak a little louder, please?
I don't know if I can or not. I'll try. I'm Patricia Broom. I live at 5577 Creekwood Circle, Westchester. I'm very happy to see and read about your Resolution 06-2011, and I'm very, very much in support of it. What I've seen in our township in the 33 years that I've been a member of it is this is a resolution that probably is 20 years late. I understand that there are situations where it's very difficult for families not to use the right-of-way. However, when you live in a community such as ours, where so many of us are in the cul-de-sac areas, it's impossible for emergency people to get in. It's impossible for the fire department to get in. I can't imagine not approving this, and I appreciate the time that you've given me. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the Board of Trustees? Yes, sir. If you'd like to give us again your name and address.
My name is Dave Graham. I live at 9159 Wintergreen Drive, Westchester. I've lived in this community for over 40 years, and as I've watched it develop, I've watched the requirements by the county to make streets wider and wider. And I realize that safety for emergency vehicles is a primary concern of the fire department, of the trustees, and of the residents of this town. I am opposed to Resolution 06-2011 because I believe that it's unfair to those people who have RVs and need a place to park them. One of the things I think that the board might want to consider as an alternative to this resolution is to put up no parking signs on those streets in which a vehicle, be it a car, an RV, or a truck, would prohibit an emergency vehicle from passing safely to receive an emergency call, could be used in place of this resolution. Now, this, number one, would be much easier for the police to enforce, because obviously if there's a no parking sign and there's a car parked there, he's subject to receiving a ticket. However, if there's an RV parked on the same street, how is the policeman to know how long it's been parked there? Whether it's been there 2 hours or 24 hours or 72 hours. So how can he go about making a judgment as to whether that vehicle is deserving or undeserving of a ticket? So I would just encourage the board to, before they vote on this resolution, to consider the alternative of perhaps no parking signs or some other alternative that might be more fair to all of the residents of the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to address the board? Doesn't have to be on this topic, could be on any topic that you think should be raised in a township meeting. Okay, not seeing anybody, we'll move along. Second readings. Mrs. Boyko.
Before conducting the second reading for resolution number 06-2011, I'd like to just address a couple of the comments shared during citizens' comments. This resolution does not specifically speak to or stipulate the notification process that the township will proceed in conducting, because we will follow the limited home rule state statutes in terms of notification and postings of township resolutions. Limited home rule resolutions are required to have their effective date is 30 days from the time the Board of Trustees approve it, and during that 30-day period, the township, through limited home rule statute, is required to publicly notice in different newspapers of general circulation. We have to have specific notices in that. We do multiple advertisements. We will post this at our Westchester activity, although not required by statute. We will post this at our Westchester Activity Center, the library, the Township Administration Building, and other civic-like buildings throughout the community. And so that's why the resolution does not specifically stipulate what that notification process would be. We're just going to follow the statute. And in regards to, there is a minor modification between the first reading and the second reading that I'd like to disclose to the Board of Trustees. Through further research and also through some input from the community, the resolution is proposed to be modified to read the storage of the parking of the recreational vehicles on township public right-of-way to extend it to 48 hours within any 14-day period. And so that is something that the board can consider, as it is currently read from the first reading. It is a 24-hour within 7 days, and we would just request the board's consideration to extend it to 48 hours within 14 days. From a time period perspective, we're not extending any particular stay or day, but in order to have consistency with the township's zoning resolution, which is a 48-hour permission to park on within the front yard on a driveway, we thought there was some benefit to having some consistency in that. So unless the board has any specific questions regarding anything I presented this evening, I would like to conduct the second reading as modified from the first reading to allow for the 48 hours and the 14 days, and that is applicable to section 4D. Yes, sir, 4D.
And after that time, we will be discussing the resolution.
So if the board,
if you'd like to go
I'm sorry, before conducting the reading, if the board would like to vote on the change to see if there's any discussion or any discernment regarding that, we can do that, or we can just read as modified and vote accordingly.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, did you have something?
Read as modified.
Read as modified?
What is in here?
Yeah. Is everyone okay with that, to read as modified?
Mr. Lang?
I agree with Ms. Wong.
I'm fine with the modification.
So this will be the second reading and vote on resolution number 06-2011, adopting regulations prohibiting commercial vehicles, trailers, and recreational vehicles, trailers, parking within the public right-of-way in residential neighborhoods, and prohibiting placement of portable storage units and dumpsters within the public right-of-way.
Okay, do we have a motion then to approve resolution number 06-2011?
So moved.
I'll second. Discussion.
Yeah, I would encourage, with all due respect to Dennis Bender as well as Patricia Brewer, I would encourage my fellow trustees to join me in not supporting this. My reasons are as follows. It's not a big issue in the township. I've been a trustee now going on 8 years. I've never once gotten a complaint on this, and I've gotten many complaints on many other topics, not once on this. I don't think we need new government regulations to address this issue. New government, we should be very careful if we ever implement new government regulations at any level of government, and in my opinion, this doesn't warrant it. we're going to have our police focus now on enforcing this rather than focus on crime and safety and the things that are really important. And the enforcement of this is not going to be consistent. The police aren't going to be out there watching for these. They're not going to go out there and mark tires to see who's been there 24, 48, 72 hours. What's going to happen is homeowners are going to call and complain about their neighbors. That's the only time that this is probably going to be enforced. And in my opinion, if this is an issue in certain neighborhoods, I believe the homeowners association should address this. I think they can handle it much better than the township can, and they can then create their own form of enforcement. If you do choose to do this, I would strongly encourage you to consider what Liberty has done and make Ms. Boyko's modification from 48 hours to 72 hours for RVs.
Mr. Long?
I hear what you're saying. However, that is 72 hours, 3 days, once a week.
45%.
Right. That's 45% per week. Every 3 days, then 4 days later, they come back again to park on the same spot. I think that's, I don't think that is a very good move. I think 48 hours in 2 weeks time span, that is very reasonable. And that, we don't want to have a permanent, well, I don't want to say that. I think this regulation is necessary, that they are being approached by many residents in our community. Our township is getting bigger by population. There are more cars on the road, and we are not building road fast enough or the road that's wide enough for all these vehicles today. Our infrastructure are very stressed. There are times that emergency vehicles must get through quickly to assist someone, save somebody's life. There are safety issues involved here. The township, we are the largest in the state, and we do not have a regulation so far. This is necessary. Signs, installing signs issues. Signs can only do so much. A lot of times they require replacement. It is labor intensive and costly in the long run. Then our police, this is a part of our police job to enforce.
Thank you. I have to agree with Mr. Wong. I appreciate the aggravation from RV owners of having more restrictions that they would have to comply with, but the fact is we have people's lives on the line here. Particularly in our older subdivisions, of which we have many, we have roads where it's very difficult to get through if you have a standard car parked on each side of the road. With an RV, it becomes virtually impossible for a full-sized ambulance, much less a fire truck, to get through. This can cost somebody a life. This is something we have to be aware of. I understand Liberty Township's effort to comply with the requests of those people who have RV owners, but I think allowing an unsafe situation 45% of the time is not a good approach to a safe situation. I think allowing people 2 full days, 2 24-hour periods, in order to either load up a vehicle before making a trip or unload a vehicle afterwards or get it ready for storage or getting it out of storage, I think is adequate. I think if you plan your time, get it there and just do it. Get the whole family out and just do it. I think it can be done, and the community is safer because of it. Your neighbors are safer because of it. Worrying about whether or not we should allow recreational vehicles or dumpsters or other large structures in the right-of-way when somebody is having a heart attack is not the time to sit and say, gosh, I wish we'd done something about this. I think no parking signs are not a good solution here because the problem is not a standard-sized automobile or SUV parked on the side of the road. The problem is a vehicle or a structure that could be 20 to 50% wider than the average parking vehicle. It's flat out a safety issue. We are trying to address that issue. As this township became larger, we have more and more RV vehicles, more and more, say, dumpsters as somebody's renovating a house or building a house. And I think we need to get this under control for the safety of the people living on those streets. So I have to agree with Mr. Wong. Nobody likes unnecessary regulations. I don't think this is unnecessary. I think it is necessary for the safety of our communities. With respect to making this a homeowners association, most communities don't have a homeowners association, or what they have is perhaps created on some piece of paper in the recorder's office, but no such structure actually exists. So there is no place for a neighborhood to go if they have a problem with somebody who is not considerate with their large vehicles. I see a need for this resolution, and I think that the average RV owner, if they ask themselves, could admit that, yeah, we could load it up in 2 days, or we could clean it out and get it ready for storage in 2 days. If I absolutely have to, I can spend 2 days and then take it to the place where it's going to be stored anyway for a week and then bring it back the next weekend to finish up getting it ready for a winter shutdown. The fact is we have people's lives at stake, and we have to consider that as being more important, in my perspective as one trustee.
Well, I respectfully disagree with my two colleagues. It's not a safety issue. Could it potentially be? Yeah, maybe it could potentially be, but we can't regulate every potential safety issue. In the history of my time as being a trustee on this board, the police chief or the fire chief has never come to me and said they've ever had an issue getting safety vehicular vehicles into a neighborhood because there was a large vehicle parked there. I'm not going to reiterate my points. I can count to 2. I know how to do that, but I think this is unnecessary government regulation. And although I somewhat agree with the concept, I totally disagree with regulation that's not absolutely needed.
We just heard also testimonies from residents on Plantation Drive.
This isn't citizens'
Yeah,
comments.
we're just going to talk
trustee
right now
comments.
about the
understand.
recreation vehicles.
And that with large vehicles parked on the street, that could cause a lot of blindside there. That could cause serious safety issues
With children rushing
for
out.
children rushing out from behind it. And this is just a matter of time.
Yeah, but if you heard the residents, they said it's super wide. There's plenty of room, and a speeder's going to have a blind side no matter what side the vehicle is. The problem there isn't the size of the vehicle. The problem is irresponsible motorists. And the fact that their road is so wide, I think it lends more credence to the argument that we shouldn't have this regulation, at least as it relates to that road. I can count to 2.
Thank you. Any more discussion on this resolution?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll then.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
No.
Thank you. At this time, we have discussion items and trustee comments, and I'm sure Mr. Wong and Mr. Lang would like to offer some opinions with respect to TIFs and RIDs and speeding on Plantation Road. Where would you like to start?
May I just introduce for those 2 topics? I was not made aware of the concern on Plantation Drive, so I certainly will do some more research investigation with the respective departments to see what was shared, what's been discussed, and after next meeting, I will I'll pledge to meet with those residents and discuss with them what some potential options are. I think some of the items that they did identify and that the township's position has been that chicane, speed humps, speed bumps are generally ineffective and very costly, regardless, but still ineffective. But certainly we'll sit down and meet with the respective departments to get the information and then sit down with those property owners. And then I know the board has comments regarding the citizens' input about the use of tax increment financing, and I just wanted to share one point that we did have the opportunity, certainly.
Everything seems, it seems as though we aren't getting any boost from
We did,
our system.
we did have the.
Can you hear out?
We did have the opportunity, is that better? We did have the opportunity
Can you hear
to.
now? I think we're having a problem with our sound system, but go ahead.
We did have an
Speak
opportunity
up.
to meet with the resident. Mrs. Williams was there as well, Mr. Kime, myself, and we did have a wonderful dialogue, the opportunity to enlighten multiple perspectives and to talk about the township's strategic and, I believe, responsible use of tax increment financing over the last 20 years. And I know the board has comments that it wanted to share. But one thing I did want to mention that did not come up during our meetings, but I do believe it warrants a response, is that the citizen mentioned that the electorate, when voting for levies, is being not fully, the information that's being fully disclosed. And I just wanted to correct that statement, is that all monies that are approved by the electorate for respective levies do go to the respective levy. So the board may recall that whenever a service levy, whether it's police, fire, MRDD, senior services, whatever, whenever it is submitted to the electorate as a ballot issue, it is first processed through a very stringent resolution process by the legislative board. And one of the steps in that process is that it's certified to the county auditor to determine what taxes will be collected based on that millage, whether it's a renewal or replacement, but taxes are certified on what would be paid. The TIF payments do not take away from those taxes that are authorized by the electorate as a ballot issue, because tax increment financing, taxes aren't paid. They're service payments in lieu of taxes, and those are never factored into any levy ballot issue as it's being considered and contemplated by the electorate.
Thank you. Did you want to have any information you wanted to proffer on the part of TIFs and RIDs?
I think in general, the TIFs that we have implemented, and for the record, we have no RIDs. We put some RIDs in place, and then we never made them come to life, and it was a defensive maneuver at the time to stop the county from putting RIDs on Westchester properties, because we did, fundamentally, this board at the time did not believe in RIDs. But I think in general, the TIFs have been very good, not only for Westchester, but I believe for the schools as well. I think if you look, the schools are receiving more money today than they were from the property before the RIDs were in place. I'm sorry, the TIFs were in place, just because the property value is worth so much more. I think it's $3 million a year that the TIFs are currently paying to the schools.
If I could offer something, the schools and all the other entities never saw a reduction in the funds they were getting. Remember, TIFs are the amounts above those amounts. So that base amount that they were paying for cornfields, and they're still getting that. Yeah. The TIF concerns funds which are paid as development happens, which raises the property value above that base amount. That base is always getting paid to
it was
all
an
the
investment
respective
from our TIFs as well as from our local developers who contributed tens of millions of dollars out of their own pocket that made the development possible, to make the land go from $10,000 an acre to, in some cases, in excess of $500,000 an acre. And when those TIFs finally expire, the schools are going to be significantly better off than they ever would have been without the TIFs. And here's one other thing that I think really helps the schools regarding the TIFs. When we implemented the TIFs, for the most part, all of the TIFs property has been developed commercially. Now, don't hold me to this statistic. It may not be exact, but you'll understand the concept. And the statistic's going to be pretty close. For every dollar a business pays in taxes, they take out about 45 cents in services. For every dollar a resident pays in taxes, they take out about $1.45 in services. And the big reason is the residents are far more demanding on the services, the public services, and primarily the school districts. So had we never had the TIFs, had we never had all the commercial boom that we've experienced in Westchester, and had those landowners of all those farms develop that land for residential instead of commercial, think of the burden that would have been on the school district. The problems the school districts are having today, they would have had a decade ago had we not implemented these TIFs to create the opportunity for more commercial development as opposed to more residential development. Do the TIFs have some warts on them? As Barry pointed out, yeah, I think they do. Are they perfect? No. But I do think in general the schools are much better off, and in the long run they will be much better off as a result of implementing the TIFs. And I wasn't on the board when the original TIFs were implemented. Had I been, though, I know I would have supported it.
I agree with my colleague, Mr. Lane. Residential development is actually a real burden to our school system. Commercial development here is really help us to the residents to offset some of our property tax. And TIF is a long-term strategy. Without TIF, we wouldn't have the spurred development in Union Center to bring in all the businesses. TIF have spurred quality corporate investment, which eases the tax burden on the residential taxpayers. Businesses generally require fewer services than residents and cause no additional burden to the schools. That's all I have to say about that.
Here's one more statistic I'd like to share. Approximately $30 million in roadway improvements have been funded by TIF. As a result of that almost $30 million investment, we have realized over $2.2 billion in new investment from commercial base, over 24 million square feet of new construction, commercial construction, and over 26,000 new jobs as a result of a approximately $28.5 million investment.
I'd like to agree with my fellow trustees. I was not here when the first trustee was created in 1990. At the time the first trustee, the first TIF was created, the TIF was created in 1990. The state law did not allow the schools to be reimbursed. This TIF was created, and the monies that were collected through that TIF paid for the $24 million Union Center Boulevard and a good share of the surrounding road structure which supported it. Now, the way you pay for those, it didn't get $24 million the first year. What it did was start to develop a road system which began attracting a large amount of commercial development. As that commercial development came in, more and more TIF money went into our TIF funds. The TIFs created these structures, this infrastructure, by borrowing money to create them. We borrowed the money to build the Union Center Boulevard interchange. We borrowed the money to build the Union Center Boulevard. We borrowed the money to provide the engineering and help with the utility to widen 747 from 2 lanes to 4 and 5 lanes. We borrowed these funds. If we killed the TIFs, we would still have over $68 million in debt with no way to pay them. Now, Mr. Gallagher has suggested that what we should do is just let those bills go, let them foreclose. After all, they're not going to come in and dig up the interchange and haul it away. Well, no, they couldn't, but they might be able to freeze every other asset we've got in this township. Nobody would ever loan us a dime again. I don't know. We'd have to talk to our legal attorney about that. But the bottom line is we as trustees have a fiduciary responsibility, which means we have a responsibility to do what is right financially for this township. This means we can't just arbitrarily break the law. We can't just arbitrarily decide not to comply with contracts that other banks and bond purchasers have entered into agreements with us on good faith. You don't do that and stay in business. Going down that road, as I'm fond of saying, you'll end up helping resurface the tennis courts at the Lompoc Federal Prison in California, if you're lucky. It could be worse. But I would like to offer also these important issues. I became a trustee in 1994, and I have to tell you, I have engaged in innumerable public conversations about the TIFs, why we entered into the TIFs, what were current projects that we thought were amenable to using TIF funding to encourage. TIF funding provided the infrastructure to create the streets of Westchester. TIF funding provided the infrastructure that brought in close to, if not more than, $2 billion worth of commercial income. Mr. Gallagher says that the police and fire departments were disadvantaged by this. In actual fact, we spent about $25 million in building new fire stations, new police stations, a new dispatching center. These are all infrastructure for safety services, which, if the TIF didn't provide them, would have had to come out of the levies. This way, the levies were able to be used entirely for operations rather than for building structures. We were able to, Mr. Gallagher says that the elderly services are being disadvantaged. I don't see how we can say they're being disadvantaged in Westchester. They now have a $4 million building to provide senior services, not just senior services, but services to everybody in our region. I don't see that as a disadvantage to them. The fact is that our TIFs have been to use an old metaphor, the geese that have been laying the golden eggs. Now, over the 30-year life of each of those TIFs, they will lay a number of golden eggs, which will benefit this township with increased commercial development, thousands of new jobs, increased subsidizing of essential services to the residents. I see no value in killing the geese before they lay all the golden eggs. There is nobody standing in the wings to finish paying off the construction loans. We have, just as people buy a home on a 30-year loan from the bank, we have in effect bought a great deal of commercial infrastructure using 20 and 30-year loans paid for by our TIF funding.
And we got a low interest rate.
And have extremely low. The interest rates are as low as 2%. Why? Because we have a AAA credit rating. Why do we have a AAA credit rating? Because we have great TIFs and we have great commercial development bringing in a substantial amount of money to guarantee the payment on those costs. As I say, if we defaulted on those loans, this township would probably never be able to sell a bond again in the bond market. And goodness knows where we would be spending our Christmases next year if we had to do that. We take our responsibilities in handling the finances of this township very seriously. That means that before we sit down with any of these TIFs, we also sat down with the school boards. The school boards were our partners, along with the developers, the farmers who own the land, the potential business owners. We all sat around literally a table, sometimes a metaphorical table, and the schools agreed that, yes, it was better to get tens of millions of dollars more by using this TIF funding than they otherwise would have gotten by not having the commercial infrastructure and getting all this commercial development. Now, as we discussed when Mr. Lang was making his comments, the schools, the elderly services, the police and fire are still getting that basic amount of revenue that they were getting before the TIFs were made, because the TIFs only involve funding on property which has increased in value above the value it had at the time the TIF was made. In addition, many people aren't aware of the fact that in, for example, the Union Center Boulevard TIF, only about 49% of the property, inside those TIFs are not actually participating in the TIFs. 49% of the property in the Union Center Boulevard TIF is still paying to the schools, elderly services, MRDD, at the same rate as they would if the TIF did not exist.
What is that
You'd have to ask the county auditor. Excuse me, but you had your comment period. This is now our comment period. At our next meeting, you can feel free to come in and add other things. The state statutes in 1990 didn't allow us to pay the schools. But we sat down with the schools anyway and said, look, are you willing to take this chance with us? That we can, for the betterment of the school district as well as the township, would you enter into this TIF? At that time, we had no idea that any school would ever be able, any district would ever be able to be reimbursed. And they said, yes, we want to do this. And when we began that TIF, when we built the interchange, when we built the first road structure, we also gave a lot of tax abatements to businesses. At one point during the 90s, we had about 3 dozen businesses had tax abatements. Here's what in a tax abatement, we would forgive taxes to a business in order to encourage them to come in. Your typical abatement was for about 50 or 60% of the taxes due for a 7-year period. But guess what? For every single abatement that this township has ever given for the entire time that I have been on the Board of Trustees, and I'm now in my 17th year, the business did not get that abatement until the school board came to us and said, we have worked out an agreement with that business that we are satisfied with. And during the period of the abatement, the schools did receive funding, some I think to the point of millions of dollars, from businesses in the Union Center Boulevard TIF, even though the TIF was not reimbursing the schools directly. It's impractical to speculate how a compensation agreement would have been reached when the UCB TIF was formed, even if it had been permitted in the legislation, which it was not. Without the incentive of TIF, which helped build the Union Center Boulevard interchange, the corporate development existing today simply would not have happened. It would have been taking place up at Monroe, where you had Highway 63 coming through. Maybe they would have bulldozed the Trader's World. It would have been unlikely that the thousands of acres in soybeans and cornfields would be anything other than soybeans and cornfields today. Residential taxpayers would have been shouldering far more of the cost of the increase in the number of students both in Westchester and in Liberty Township today without the Union Center Boulevard and all the commercial infrastructure which was created by our TIFs. In fact, last year, if you gather up all the TIFs together, the TIFs that did reimburse the schools provided Lakota School District about $3 million. More than $3 million. This was one of the reasons why the school board, when we first sat down with them in the early 90s, said, yes, we're on board for this. We would rather have X percent and get $3 million than get nothing. If changes were made to the original legislation, Westchester could not arbitrarily select which amendments to the TIF statutes it would apply to the existing Union Center Boulevard TIF. Westchester could not decide to apply the section of the amended statutes just to those parts which affect the schools.
You have more?
One more. It's highly probable if the township had not created the TIFs, none of this would have happened. You're talking about kissing off probably 20,000 jobs, probably $2 billion for up to now, and looking forward a few years, $2 billion in commercial development. And this is development which will be supporting the schools for generations to come. The TIFs start expiring in 10 years. 10 years, the Union Center Boulevard TIF will be gone. Will have matured and be gone. But it will leave behind a legacy of commercial development which will support this community for generations.
May I add that TIFs also keep dollars local to build amenities and supplement levies. TIF have funded infrastructure, public safety services and community amenities that would not have otherwise been realized. The amenities and essential services add to the quality of life, enhance property values, and encourage positive development. With approximately $10.5 million of park and recreation projects funded by TIF, Westchester enjoys conservation and preservation green space, the Morehouse Barn, Beckett Park, the Port Union Bike Path, Westchester Baseball Complex, the Square Union Center. A $14 million branch library, land and building constructed in 2009 was funded through TIF. Even small things as landscaping make our township look nice, mulching, those are all important for the overall appearance of our township, for the development. Imagine a building is not kept up, township building, not painted, roofs start leaking. What does people come into our townships going to think about us? The first impression is what they say, the last impression. I think it is so important. Without TIF, we're not going to survive as it is today.
Thank you. Did you have any other comments?
I did have some other comments. We have a special guest with us tonight from the County Auditor's Office. We have Joe Statzer. Joe, would you stand up and say hi to everybody? Anybody has a question relating to anything to do with the Auditor's Office? Joe has told me he'll be happy to stay around after the meeting and talk to anybody here that would like to. Property tax bills were due in last month. Joe doesn't want to talk about those. No, he'll be happy to discuss anything with you that you need to. So, Joe, I know you come out here about once a quarter, and just know we and our residents appreciate the effort that you do on behalf of the Auditor's Office. So, thank you very much. At the last two meetings, I brought up the idea of the zoning committee, the review, to analyze our current zoning code, to recommend some potential modifications. Mr. Wong, at that last meeting, you said you would think about it and talk about it again tonight, so I'm just seeing if you've come to a decision regarding that.
I still need more time to look into that.
Okay, we'll bring it up again at the next meeting then.
All right. Thanks.
And that's all I have.
Yeah, I'm very concerned about the situation with speeders on Plantation Road, and I'd appreciate it if staff could look into that and see if we can find ways to tackle that problem. That sounds like a real safety issue. I'd sure appreciate it if we could get sort of a ballpark cost on putting in sidewalks there, in case the residents, I know they said they balked at the cost. I don't know if they had a cost of what it would be if the township put it in. The township can borrow money at a lot cheaper rate than the average person can to do the job, and then put that cost on the property and pay it off over a period of 20 years. It could be that property owners might find that a cost-effective way to keep their children off the streets and in a safer zone than on the streets. I'm very concerned. There's got to be some way we can tackle some of these speedsters. 70 miles an hour down a residential street is...
I agree. But I agree with
it's just begging to have somebody
get
killed.
with the residents and report back to us in a meeting or two on that, rather than spend a lot of time on that now. I think she'll...
Well, I think Ms. Stoker brought up a good point. Sidewalk is a good thing. Is a music to my ears. But, sidewalk is a very that will enhance a lot of safety issues, and let's look into that.
Just so you know, if the board chooses to proceed with any type of infrastructure, that the capital costs obviously are the burden up front by the township. Project hasn't been budgeted. Probably talking about several hundred thousands of dollars, and being able to identify where that funding source would be.
Well, we had another part of the town that we were going to put in $200,000 with the sidewalks. They didn't want
That's
the
in your
sidewalks.
market.
Well, we did say we'd look for another opportunity on the 42 corridor to spend that money. But
That's right. That is a very good point.
But that money's already been earmarked for other purposes.
It's been earmarked for that 42 corridor, even if those people
No.
did not want to
Look, we're
sidewalk.
government, no matter what we decide, it's not going to happen quick anyway, so let's just work on a fix and see if we can come to an agreeable solution for all parties.
Anything else,
I
Mr.
have
Wong?
one comment about, I think we need to look at this retire, rehire policy again. I think our township need to have a resolution on retire, rehire. To have a person stay on a job for over a long period of time, over 30 years, and then the person retire and come back on the same position, and usually it's the head of the department. Yes, we have a lot of good people. Yes, that person is very good. But however, I think this stifles the advancement of good employee and the potential of losing a good employee from the rank and file. People working in our township do not have an opportunity to move up if we keep bringing the same people back. The real saving day is not 15%. In about 2 to 3 years, they got all the money back. They're back to the same old pay again. I think no one is so indispensable that cannot be replaced. Even I can be replaced. Everyone in this room can be replaced.
So the politicians can always be replaced.
Easily. So I think that we need to have a policy that we need to develop a policy that stop this retire, rehire. It's enough is enough. And that some people feel that it's a right for them to be rehired. And we don't rehire them, they sue us. Now that costs us a lot of money. Enough is said about that. One more thing. Our township is the largest, and I found out that we do not have a noise resolution, and that we have received so many complaints.
Well, actually, we do have a noise resolution.
That about dumpster pickup, that bothering the neighbors, the residential area, that comes at 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, wakes residents up, banging the dumpster. I mean, we need to have a regulation about so many feet away, they need a certain time they can come pick up. I mean, I'm not talking about the garbage pickup or residential area.
Commercial residents can hear.
That's right, can hear. They use hydraulics to lift those big dumpsters and make a lot of noise. They're a lot noisier than a regular dump truck, the pickup, which don't require the big hydraulics to lift. So I ask this board that we need to look into this and draft up a noise resolution and let us move forward on that.
If you're looking for support from me for more government regulations, I'd be hard-pressed to support more government regulations.
This is about wise regulation.
Well, Lee, have you considered the unintended consequences?
Well,
let's say, for example, we prohibit commercial property if you abut a residential area within, I don't make a number, 500 feet. You can't do it until 6 o'clock. Okay, now all of a sudden we have all of those dumpsters that earlier were on the roads at 4 and moving on, not getting started till 6. Now think about how it's going to back up the school buses. Think about what it's going to do to rush hour traffic. There are unintended consequences with every regulation that we put in place. I realize that this is maybe an inconvenience to a few people, but I don't think government regulations are the way to solve those type of problems. It'll only lead to more problems.
Well, right now, all these trash collecting companies are running our township. There's no regulation. You will tell them, do not come at 4:30 in the morning. They will abide by it for 1 day, 1 week, next week they come right back. And this is getting a reoccurring incident here. And it has brought to our attention many times. I'm surprised none of the residents come up here to speak.
This is one of the issues that comes up regularly. This topic basically, when residential and commercial resides closely together, they annoy each other. Residential doesn't like the noise, doesn't like the lights. Commercial says, what are you trying to do? We provide jobs, we pay taxes. You're trying to shut us down just when we're busiest. It's a difficult issue. It will, and I don't know that there is any solution. This is one of the reasons when we were looking for property for a park, we picked the Beckett Road, the Beckett Park area, because it helps provide a buffer between the commercial interests and the residential interests. But this is going to be an ongoing problem. In this particular instance, I have to side with Mr. Lang. We have talked about this before. I have spoken of it with Judy and staff when this has come up before. And basically the problem is if they can't pick up trash from the commercial areas early in the morning, they have to pick them up during commute time. And that provides another whole world of problems. So it's sort of like darned if you do and darned if you don't. And I'm not sure that simply telling them they can't pick up at a certain time is going to help the situation.
And then what do we do about the opposite end, where residents and businesses abut, and all of a sudden there's noise issues in the evening? We're going to tell businesses you have to shut down at 10 o'clock? Well, that's a very real problem in certain places as well. Now, I'm all for it. Let's look at our noise ordinance, see if it needs to be updated, but I would be hard.
I think we need to put a punitive clause in it to fine them $500 for violating our noise regulation. Right now, they just blow us off. They're not going to abide.
It isn't just
church
that.
Residents continuously contacting me asking for regulation. We are the largest township and we do not have a resolution on noise, against noise.
We do have a noise resolution.
We do. Mr. Wong, it isn't?
But it's not punitive.
Well, we do have a noise resolution, it just doesn't address the concern that you have.
Regarding dumpster
Yes.
pickup in the morning,
Yes, does not, the current noise resolution does not cover
Does not
waste
cover.
hauler and
Waste
regulate
hauler.
waste hauler.
right, so they can come pick up at 4:30 in the morning.
Legally.
What are we going to do?
Well, even if the board amended the noise resolution to not regulate hours of pickup, they could still come at 4 a.m. It just they would not be able to violate the noise ordinance, the decibel hearing.
Yes,
So there's
but
two different
that's
things.
basically up to them to comply, if they want to comply with our law or not, because there is no punitive clause in it. Am I correct? There is no penalties. What kind of penalties?
Currently, the way the noise resolution is drafted, the violation occurs when a certain decibel level is sound. And I don't believe the way it's currently written that the decibel levels of the commercial pickup, waste hauler pickups, reaches that violation decibel level. So currently, as it's drafted, there is no violation. If the board wanted to consider regulating that, you could do one of two things. You could regulate the hours of pickup, or you could regulate the decibel level of the noise and the sound to determine if they would be then in violation.
I would take the formal, the hours of pickup.
I will not support that. I would support looking at the decibels, you know, I don't know when the last time the noise ordinance has been updated.
Last year.
Last year, okay.
And we did address this with the board.
So a resident's going to get up at 4:30 in the morning, go out to get a device to measure the noise decibel?
No, they file a complaint and then
It's
police
going to be
or
just like
staff
the
set
ordinance
up
we passed tonight with the RVs.
the machinery to measure.
You know, there's no punitive damage if someone does park an RV and violate it. We are not going to police it. It's going to be up to a residents to call us in and tell us.
So who is coming out to measure the noise decibel at 4:30 in the morning?
Well,
Police used to go to
if a complaint
Zappos.
is logged, it goes with the police department. The police department is the enforcer of the noise ordinance.
And the police can be there at 4:30 in the morning, responds every time on time to measure the noise decibel.
There's no guarantee.
It's absolutely, I don't think that's a solution.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree at this point. I don't see support for amending that resolution. I'm open, though, to hearing if staff can think of some way we can resolve this issue. I'm not sure if our noise regulation's going to do it.
Can we look at the resolution of a township that was brought up to you recently? Is it Sylvania?
Yes. And I believe they regulate the hours of operation.
Regulatory hours. And there is punitive clause in it. Can we do that?
I'm not interested in that.
I will look at anything. I'm not saying I would agree to anything, but I'm always willing to hear how other communities are handling similar
And the
problems.
board has that information. When Trustee Wong forwarded it to me, I did forward it to you all. You do have that.
Okay. Well, I'm here for the public good.
As
residents came up to me, I bring it up to the board.
And we discuss it, and sometimes we agree, and sometimes we don't. And
Okay, so be
and
it.
sometimes if something doesn't make a change at one point, maybe later other issues will come up. We'll have a different thinking. We'll find a innovative way some other community is handling a similar problem. We might come up with an idea that we didn't have when it was discussed previously. My attitude is if somebody tells me no, they clearly didn't get all the information they needed to make the appropriate decision. So I'm willing to to listen to any discussion on any
I am
project.
as well.
I may not always agree, but I always want to hear.
I
So-
think as Trustee Wong said, anything short of regulation and punitive damages is not going to be favorably complied with. There are probably half a dozen, I'll call them repeat offenders, where we traditionally, this time of year, when people like to open their windows and enjoy the weather, there are probably half a dozen or so properties that we continually get complaints from. And we have attempted our best from a staffing perspective to ask the waste haulers to comply voluntarily. And Trustee Wong is exactly correct. You see some reprieve for several weeks, and then it kind of gets back into their cycle of what's convenient. Anything short of threat of regulations is probably the only thing that's going to make
It
them
needs some
comply.
negative feedback in order to encourage them to cooperate.
And, if that's the message the board would like for me to send to those waste haulers, that there's a potential...
It is not, in my opinion. With every regulation, there will be unintended consequences. You just can't foresee everything that's going to happen.
So right now, it's basically a voluntary compliance on our noise regulation, right? Bottom line is,
I doubt that the waste haulers are violating our noise resolution. I doubt their decibels are that high. As annoying as it is to a resident who lives right by it, and I do empathize with that, I doubt they would be in violation of our noise resolution.
I disagree with you. It is very loud.
Oh, I'm sure to the people, right there it is, but I doubt they would be exceeding the decibels that are in our noise resolution. And I don't know that I'm correctly, I'm just saying in my opinion.
Okay, I think we're starting to just say
We could
the
have
same
the police
things over
measure it and find out.
Well, we have determined, I think, very unscientifically that the current decibels that violate the sound, the noise ordinance, this type of activity does not demonstrate a violation. So,
If it wakes up a resident at 4:30 in the morning, that's a violation?
Well, that's kind of subjective. When I had a newborn baby, if that baby just snorted in his sleep, I was awake and at the side of his crib. I mean, that's a subject. If it's waking somebody up, that's subjective. I can wake up if it starts raining or if the wind blows the trees.
to address Trustee Wong's question, is that the decibels are at a certain level, so that to take the subjectivity out of that they have to reach a certain decibel level in order to be in violation of the noise ordinance. And currently, without any type of action from this board, it's our understanding that those decibel levels do not reach that noise violation sound.
What is, can you recall what is the decibel level?
Isn't it 85 or 90?
I think it depends on the noise. It could be versus a car, exhaust
Car
versus music.
versus
So
a teen club or a nightclub.
sound is measured on
or-
different levels based on the sound, and so it. But we can certainly do a field experiment.
I'm willing to talk about it in the future. Again, I'm not sure no action is warranted. I'm just not sure that changing the hours, maybe that's what we need to do. Maybe I'm just not sure. I've got enough information now to say, let's change something. But I would like to get more information before
I
make
want
an
to
opinion.
suggest you bring it up to 6 o'clock. No pickup until after 6 a.m. in the morning.
Well, we can't say that because you're talking about commercial areas within so many feet of a
From the
residence.
residence.
Because you can't say that across the board, or you can guarantee there would be 150 dump trucks in the middle
May I
of the community.
summarize what I'm sensing from the board's deliberation is that a trustee is not in favor of any regulation regarding this topic.
Not necessarily, that's not a fair assessment. I'd be willing to listen. I'm just very cautious about implementing any new regulations, but I'd be willing to listen.
Well, it sounds like there's more interest on the board to look at measuring the decibel level of what is determined to be in violation of the noise ordinance, as it relates to this activity, as opposed to establishing hours of regulations.
Can I ask a question, though? Is there any way in a regulation we can differentiate in a noise regulation between the noise that's coming from a dumpster and some other noise?
Yes, we do that now. You have different decibel readings for exhausts, cars, stereos, versus constant noise coming from a single-family home or a business.
Or somebody doing repair work?
There's no need to get so technical. All it is change it from pickup from after 6 a.m. in the morning.
I'm just reiterating what the board said, Mr. Trustee Wong.
No, I have to say, I think we do have to be technical, to Mr. Lang's point, to ensure we don't cause unintended consequences that we had no intentions of doing.
Mr. Lang's view earlier, he states it very clearly, he's against any regulation.
That's not true, Mr. Wong. That's not true. I voted for many regulations in my 7 years on this board. Many regulations. I'm not against regulations.
I'm not that.
We just have to be very
say that
careful
several
when we...
times. You are against on any regulation.
Well, then you heard
across the
wrong.
board.
You heard wrong.
Well, I think
You sat with me as I voted for regulations.
Okay, gentlemen, I think we can move on from this. I think we've reached a point. I think Judy is going to come back with some information for... I would like to talk to you about it. I don't feel a sense from the board that it's ready to move ahead to do anything right now. I personally would like to talk about it with you to look at different options that might be available and try to understand what consequences might happen if we try to make, say, some of the changes that Mr. Wong has supported. Okay? Ready to move on? Any more discussion?
No.
Okay. And I think Mrs. Boyko is going to look into the Plantation Drive situation. At this time, then, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the regular meeting and go into executive session with legal counsel for the purpose of considering and discussing personnel matters, the negotiations and ratification of certain collective bargaining contracts, and the board may return. Do I have a motion?
I'll second it.
Discussion? Mrs. Williams, if you call the roll.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. That was very exciting. Meeting of April 12th, 2011. I will entertain a motion to approve employment agreements between Westchester Township Board of Trustees and the Fraternal Order of Police, FOP Lodge 186, effective October 1st, 2010 through September 30th, 2013.
I so move.
I'll second it.
Discussion?
The police contract expired in October 1st of last year, 2010. And we have been negotiating this with all collective bargaining units. And we have represented the community's best interests and good stewardship of taxpayers' dollars. And the contract represents Westchester Police Collective Bargaining Unit representing 84 police officers, which expire October 1st, 2010.
I think I should amend my request for a motion to include the fact that we are including both officers below the rank of sergeant as well as the sergeants and lieutenants. There are two different contracts that are basically similar, but for two different groups. One group being the officers below the rank of sergeant, and the other being the sergeants and lieutenants.
Lee made the motion. You amend your motion?
I'm amending my motion because I
Actually,
didn't
Lee
include.
made the motion. Do you amend?
Okay.
I do.
Do you agree to that
Okay.
amendment?
Yes.
I'll agree to the second.
Okay, discussion? Did you want to add something, Mr. Wong? I'd just like to say that while recent state legislation affecting collective bargaining units may have provided additional leverage for the township, ongoing disputes, the likelihood of a referendum, drawing out the process, we believe would have simply resulted in additional legal and staff costs outweighing potential savings. So we figure this is
I would agree.
a contract we could abide by, and we're prepared to move forward on it.
Though there's a lot of uncertainties because of the SB 5 passage, and that renegotiating the contract is going to cost us a lot more in legal fees.
Absolutely, then it would be saving.
And management time.
So it will not be,
Not to mention staff time as well. I mean, the rank and file as well.
yes.
Now, there are cost-saving measures for the township in this agreement. Basically, a new step has been added for patrol officers, which reduces the annual increase in pay per year for the applicable officers. And a probationary step was added to the supervisor contract, so that newly promoted supervisors will only receive half, will only receive half of the pay increase before and the remainder of the increase after probation. There have been significant changes to the health insurance language, which will result in savings for the township. Officers represented by the contract will pay a slightly higher percentage of the health insurance premium, which brings all our employees into the same percentage of premium cost. Correct. Which is a savings to the township.
Okay, I'm ready to vote.
Are you ready to vote, Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang? Mrs. Williams, if you'll call the roll, please.
Mrs. Stoker?
Yes.
Mr. Wong?
Yes.
Mr. Lang?
Yes.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Mrs. Williams?
All in favor?
Aye.